Thanks, Quentin. Thanks, Jennifer. It's great to be here with you on the pod. My name's Neil Metzler, born and raised in Seattle. I moved internationally in big tech to London and Berlin, and I've now founded a data analytics startup in sports media and entertainment called Omnisent Sports. We are excited to be here and talk with you.
Yeah, why don't you share your background as like a sports fan? Like why sports, data and analytics out of all the things you could have done?
Yeah, I grew up playing basketball, tennis, fencing, squash. I really needed sports to get my energy out as a kid, like running around. Yeah, only child, like high energy, only child, right? As I grew into a young adult and I moved away from home for college, staying connected with the Seattle sports teams, especially the Seattle Seahawks, was an anchor for me. I listened to the radio broadcasts and watched the like live stats ticker on my laptop in my dorm. Yeah, that was just something where I always had something to talk about with my parents and my uncles and my aunts, and it kept me grounded, kept me with that sense of place, sense of identity, even as I moved to Boston for university, then Germany, then Beijing. So I've lived in four, five, six different countries now, but that string with sports has always stayed strong for me.
When you were thinking about building something on your own, you wanted to go back to that kind of place that had given you so much emotional resonance. Can you tell us a little bit about your founder's journey, how you decided to start Omnisent?
Yeah, it started as a passion project about 6 years ago. I wanted to explore social sentiment around the Seattle Seahawks legendary head coach, Pete Carroll, at that time. And there was a controversy that was tearing the fan base apart, whether to keep the legendary head coach and move or trade the star quarterback, Russell Wilson, or to let Russ cook and move on from Pete. I was listening to podcasts every night, and I felt like I wasn't getting the full picture. I wanted to hear if other people in the fan base also felt like me and to really understand at an every fan level, not at an expert analyst level or like a podcast host level, how people really felt. I had been working at Amazon on a trend detection engine for fashion, and I'd been on a technical journey of upskilling myself for Amazon Web Services and cloud computing. So I thought, why don't I take some of these data analytics approaches that I'd been using for fashion or for e-commerce and apply them to my favorite team? And so I coded a small app in Python. I made some simple API calls. It was very manual. It was not elegant, but it worked. So I ran this tracking app for 2 years about fan sentiment on Pete Carroll. And in the end, I published a blog post about it on the SB Nation blog roll. I think connecting it back to the community was a big step because it went from being a technical project into part of the cultural conversation about the team. And the feedback that I got from friends, from family, and even from folks that I'd never met before really made me feel like I wasn't the only one who was curious what everyone was thinking. And that shared emotional resonance around what do we do as a fan base really stuck out to me. So at the time, I was still working full time. I didn't take any next steps at that time. And I ended up coming back to the idea a few years later.
Yeah. So you and I had the opportunity to meet actually in an angel investing community, and that's how we found each other. Why don't you share a little bit of how Omniscient was operating before Omniscient and Rising Tide Partners had the opportunity to start working together?
So I had completed a 6 month incubator program. And in parallel with that, I was taking baby steps in angel investing and wrote my first check via the Hustle Fund Angel Squad network, which you and I are both a part of. This was like a self-paced learning for myself, both of these things, doing the incubator and writing my first angel check, because I knew I wanted to take a step forward in my career. I thought that might be an entrepreneurial leadership, and I wanted to explore possibilities without making like an all or nothing huge jump. So, yeah, I programmed a few things into my H1, and I actually ended up putting in my notice at my full-time job by end of February. So, yeah, I had like a smooth crossover into getting really serious about this idea and the idea of moving deeper into startups. But the kind of fear factor for me was also not that high because I'd been working in the AWS startups organization. So I had been tasked with engaging CTOs, VPs, and directors of engineering and directors of data about their technology strategy and how to create business value from tech. So I had been in some of the rooms where very talented leaders were making difficult decisions. And I think that if you can see it, you can be it thing. I really believe in that. So all of these factors built up in my decision to take the leap to found Omnisent in July 2025.
I think one of the things that is a through line of some of the things that we're going to talk about is this notion that founders have to have had it all figured out, right? Like you have to be the visionary, you have to be the person that does everything. But you have ostensibly had a good experience working with us and getting those outside perspectives. What's your overall thought about that, and how have you engaged experts in different parts of your business to get feedback as you've moved forward?
Yeah, the having it figured all out is a real thing, was a real thing for me in the first kind of 6 months, especially because you want to present as confident to potential partners, potential co-founders, potential investors. Even the first time that I met you two, I needed to paint a picture of what was possible, even though I didn't know who would be building it, who we'd be building it for, if people would pay for it. So that's a lot of ambiguity. At Amazon, in addition to the famous leadership principles, one thing that many people in the public don't know that deals with ambiguity is a major aspect around the fit discussion in hiring at Amazon. So if someone is giving flags that they have trouble dealing with ambiguity, probably they're not going to be a great fit in a fast-moving team during reorgs, reinventions, pivots, things like that. So I think that the conditioning that I experienced going through 9.5 years of career at Amazon AWS helped me face that with a bit more courage. Although doing it on your own name, without a nice like company email address, it really means putting yourself out there. So yeah, for sure, Jennifer, I was struggling a bit with rejection and remembering that rejection is input to the next iteration. And I've now seen that cycle a few times. So we're having success. We're also having challenge, but I think that I've seen that a few times now. So I'm building my confidence up as I go.
There's a fine line between fake it until you make it and also being open to outside perspectives. I think you got to teeter right on the edge there.
Yeah. What helped me from the RTP perspective was taking a data-driven approach, saying, hey, Neil, you've had 3 discovery conversations. Imagine once we've had 7, 8, 9, 10 discovery conversations, keep seeking feedback from the market. And I think we're going to talk about how that market in versus product out perspective was a major unlock for me. It gave me permission to go into discovery calls, realizing that I didn't need to close the sale there. I wasn't there to close the sale. I was there to understand the problem space and give myself line of sight to building something that adds value.
Yeah, let's actually dig into that a little bit. So in the early days, your pitch was all about tech and architecture, right? As you had it in your mind that you were selling to the CTO because that was a persona that you were comfortable selling to. And back to your AWS selling days. Let's talk about how that original pitch morphed itself no more into a market in versus product out approach. And how has that felt for you to also make that pitch adjustment, or just even going away from pitching, just listening first?
Absolutely. I think one clear example of that was an investor I approached after seeing them speak on stage at an industry event. And this investor had been speaking on a panel about contextual engagement and audience activation. And these are sweet spots for us. And I had written down a bunch of notes. And I was like, this is great. This investor is going to definitely be interested to talk with me. So I walked up with confidence, approached, shook their hand after they had a chance to catch their breath. And they asked me, what are you building? And I said something like, next generation decision engine for AI workflows in marketing. And the investor looked at me like I was from a different planet and just gave me like that East Coast kind of like, what? You know, that very brusque, like to the point East Coast, what? And I didn't have a follow-up. Like I didn't have a strong reframe or like a one line on top of that. Whatever I said next didn't really land. So coming out of that, I really started to think, who can help me reframe this? Because I see the market opportunity, I see how the technology connects, but I need to know how to communicate, establish shared understanding, and speak my customer's language instead of my old language that had worked for me as a technology salesperson at AWS.
Interesting. So tell us a little bit more about how that evolved. So start with this very tech heavy, I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm building, didn't land. Where did we go from there?
Absolutely. I spoke with a 10-year industry veteran in a safe space, pitched him one-on-one. It was a warm intro via a friend. And he said, what I'm hearing you say, if I've understood it correctly, is really exciting. And I can think of a bunch of customers to refer you to. Have I understood you that A, B, and C? So we had this kind of 60-minute coming to Jesus session where I walked out with a much better understanding of what the demand signals from my market were. And then I was able to bring that to speak with the two of you. And we have since reconstructed from the ground up the value proposition, the key pain points that we address, how we address them, and how to communicate that. So now I feel equipped, like I've got a full deck of cards to play with instead of really struggling to reframe for the right audience.
Yeah. We came to you and said, let's try to take a market in approach, not a product out approach. What did that initially mean to you? And did you understand what the feedback we were attempting to give to you?
I had like an emotional release when we talked about that, to be honest, because I had been feeling very like stiff and brittle in my approach. And I was seeing things as like success or failure. And what the market in reframed it for me was gave me permission not to have all the answers and to need to evangelize my product before I'd even established product market fit. Because I have grown up seeing founders on stage in prestigious places, I thought that it was my job to put the little headset mic on, like stride onto the stage. It's a lot better building with this market in rather than product out approach. I can lean into the kind of agility, the kind of prototyping, rapid iteration that I always knew would work for me, going back to having read Lean Startup, having worked with startups. So I think that was the point where it started to make sense for me of hypothesis testing, running small, quick experiments, doubling down on what makes sense. And Jennifer said something really that stuck with me, which was like that you can't bully the market into seeing it your way. And that again just was like a release for me because it gave me permission not to convince the customer, hey, you're screwed if you don't do it like I'm telling you. that conversation could go something different. I hear that you're hitting scaling constraints and you're looking for ways to solve that without linear hiring. Here's what that could look like. And that's a more collaborative conversation. That's a conversation that can repeat and scale sustainably with different organizations as well.
Yeah, that is something I'm very fond of saying. I think if I look back in my go-to-market career, 201, every successful product launch I've ever been a part of has been successful because we listened to the market first.